Hello and welcome back to Jimbo's PC Builds. Today is time to do another case review. So without further ado, let's have a look at the case that we're going to be reviewing today. So the case I'm going to be looking at today is the Vetroo AL600. This is going to be a very interesting review because I've done a video on it, and other people like Gamers Nexus have done a video on it. They do an extremely good CPU cooler, and as I was looking through Newegg, I spotted that they do a PC case as well. So I thought, well, I've got to have a look at that as soon as I've looked at the cooler already. So as I'm going to do with this, as I do with all the cases, first thing I'm going to do is put it on the test bench, and we'll do a walk around of the case, the back, the inside, the front, the back, etc. And then I'll do a build in it, and then I'll give you my final thoughts and conclusion on the case. Alright, so without further ado, let's get the case on the bench and give it a good whip round. So on first inspection, the build quality is actually pretty good, I have to say. It's fairly rigid, it's not like flimsy, it's not been made of cheap steel. It's got a fully meshed front, which is nice. It's glass side panel, and already I can see inside that it's got a lot of included fans. The glass side panel is hinged, so there's a little cotton like tab here that you put your finger in, you pull and it's open. It's held to the case by two magnets here. They're not that large, and as a warning to you, I would definitely take the door off before doing anything with the case. I gave it a quick once over, as you always do before you start recording the video, to get your thoughts and gather and look around at the features. And I left the door on, and I went to lift it, and the door fell off. So it is great for easy access and stuff like that. But if you're going to do anything in it, take the door off. Take the door off, and to take it off, you just slip. See when it's open, lift it up, and there's the two loops that go over the metal studs there, which give you the hinge, and it just comes straight off. So inside, we've actually got 6 fans. There's 3 120s on the front. They've mounted 2 120s here by the graphics card, and 1 here for outtake. My only concern with this is going to be a very positive pressure based case, because you've got 3 intakes on the front, 2 intakes there, and only 1 outtake. So basically, air's going to be coming in from the front, it's going to be coming in from the bottom. And to be honest, I think a lot of the air is going to be from these two, is going to hit the graphics card, to be fair, and the graphics card is going to use that fresh air. But a lot of it is going to spill over, and it's going to be making its way up here, so you've got all the front, and it's going to have like a wind turbine effect, which is going to be, it could be good, because I'm going to be using the Vetroo air cooler in this build. So a lot of air is going to come from the front towards it, and a lot of air is going to come that way, so you're going to have like an airflow effect that way going towards the back. And I preferred it if possibly, if I was going to change the configuration of the case around, which I'm not, I'm going to leave as is, I'd have moved these 2 fans from here up to the top, just to make sure then you've got 3 in, 3 out. But I'm going to leave it as is for now, just to see how it goes. You've got a pretty standard power supply basement, where you've got a nice little cutout to be able to see your PSU. You've got a good size cutout of the fronts for radiators or an AIO or whatever, so you could probably mount them there. Also, you've got room for 2 more fans or an AIO here. So, and you've got an extra room for another 120 on the bottom as well. So you could put a lot of fans, and if we look at the top, there's mountings for, I think, well, yeah, at least, I would say 3 120s at the top, maybe 2 140s. So you could probably fit a 280 at the top or a 360 radiator at the top. But you've got enough room. There's already 6 fans included. You've got enough room for another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you could have 12 fans running in this thing. So obviously there's a lot of thought gone into making sure there's a lot of air cooling. Alright, that's the inside. We'll then, oh, sorry, before I forget, there's only 2 cutouts here for passing cables through. Not a big fan of that, because if your motherboard power doesn't line up with these, it can be a bit difficult for bending your cables, and it can look a bit ugly. It'd have been nice to either see grommets around these, or like a full slit, like you've done in most cases, so you can line up the cables a lot easier. But we'll see how that goes when we do the build. You've also got the 2 pop-up through holes here for your fans and your CPU power cable as well. Alright, so with the inside gone through, let's go on to the front, pull the cover off, have a look at the mesh on it, and then we'll work our way around. So, like most cases, to pull the front panel off, you literally you hold it, you put your hand at the bottom, and you give it a good heave. Oh, a really good heave. Whoa! Whoa, that needed a lot of heave to get that off. I'm just a bit worried that maybe some of the things will have been damaged, but they don't seem to be. They basically held in, it's like these prongs here that are fatter at the end, so you have to push them back in. In terms of the mesh, there is no additional filtration behind it. There's basically just the mesh, which then goes straight to the fans. The fans themselves, as I said, there's 3 RGB fans installed de facto. It's come out of the box. As you can see, there's 3 pass-throughs, 1 for each cable, for each of the fans. And yeah, that's pretty much the front. Very, very, very standard. So now let's have a look at the back. The panel just slides off, pretty standard. They're thumb screws, and they are captive, which is nice, so you don't have to worry about losing the screws. And you just literally pull the slide, and it comes away. Oh, and the panel's actually got a filter on it as well, if you wanted to use that space for 2 fans there. So at the back, this is where a lot of the business is done. You've got, the first thing that really stood out for me is you've got 2 of these like plastic cable routers, so you can put cables in there. They already look pretty full with all the fan cables that you've already got and the front IO cables. So I don't know how much more cabling you'll be able to get in those, but I'll see as obviously I'll do the build. You've got a hard drive tray at the bottom here, which is removable but not movable. Okay, there's a thumb screw that you undo, and again, in this case, this one is not captive, so it takes a bit of a while to unscrew. And then what you have to do is a little tab at the front, you press it, and it comes out. So there's your hard drive cage. Now it's got mounting on the top for an SSD. You could probably use an adapter to put 2 more SSDs, but interestingly, one thing I did notice is there's no mounting for SSDs on the back of the motherboard plate. I think that for me is a bit of a restriction, because realistically it means you can only mount 1 SSD. I know there's a big movement towards NVMe drives now, but it does mean that you've only got the facility to install 1 SSD, so I'm not a big fan of that. And it would have been more handy as well if you had the facility to move this further along, if you've got a larger power supply, like some of the Corsair 1000 watt power supplies are quite long. So it would have been nice to be able to move this rather than just having to take it out, because of course if you take this out, you've got no mounting points for SSDs. To put it back in, you just slide it in and then it clips, and then you take the lengthy process of rescrewing the thumb screw back in. Voila. They've also given you a fan and RGB controller, which is nice. When mine came, this was actually loose. It's only stuck on by double-sided sticky tape, so I had to stick this back on. The good thing about that is if I wanted to move it, I could probably move it, which was good, but the bad thing is if it's come unstuck once, it couldn't unstuck again. So that's something to be aware of. I don't think it'd be a major issue, but just keep that in mind. In terms of cable tie points, there's 3 at the back here for your CPU power cable. One of the things that concerns me is with these fan holes here, you can see that you've got fan cables dangling around. So you're probably going to have to do a little bit of work to try and make sure that you've not got cables showing to the front of the case when you've got everything installed. But I'll see how it goes during the build. And yeah, everything else is pretty standard. You've got a standard PSU mount, and yeah, that's about it. Oh, and then we look at the underneath. And again, you've got one of these pretty cheap throwaway. Is this one? No, it's not magnetic, which is just a filter for the PSU fan. Don't like those, they come away very easily, they're very easily lost, but a lot of cases do that, so that's fine. So now let's have a look at the back. At the back, it's pretty standard towards the top. You've got the 120 fan installed, as I mentioned before. Then you've got this little cover contraption here, which, interestingly, there are no screws already in place for your expansion cards, and these covers are the ones that ping out. So once you've taken them out, beware, because you can't put them back in unless you've got spares that you can use, which you've got to be screwed back in. So to get at those, you've got to unscrew this little thumb screw here, And then so to install your graphics card, you're going to have to take this whole thing off. And beware, because this screw is not captive, and I nearly lost it because it's actually quite short on the quiet. You have to make sure it's mounted back correctly before you reinstall it. And to reinstall it is a bit of a pain because you have to try and line it up, and then you have to try and get the screw in. Not the best, I'm not particularly impressed with that, but it is what it is. And again, you've got your hole for your PSG. Let's have a look at the top and have a look at the I/O. So you've got what is now pretty standard magnetically held dust filter on top, and then you've got the power button, just normal button sound. Then you've got a reset switch. You've got two USB ports, a headphone and microphone jack, and a USB 3 port. There's no USB-C on this, so just be aware of that. Then you've got a button for controlling the lights, which has actually got a nice little clicky sound to it. But yeah, I'd have preferred on this if we had USB-C, so that's not great for me. Alright, so that's the case walked around. I'm going to start the build now, put it in there, and once I've done the build, I'll give you my final thoughts and conclusion on the case. So before we get on with the build, let's have a look at the parts that I'm putting in it. This is going to be an AMD based build, both in terms of CPU and GPU. So I'm going to be using the MSI MPG X570 Gaming Engine Wi-Fi. This is the one that I filmed by mistake in my Fractal Pop Mini review video. So this time I'm actually using this board. In it I'm going to be putting a Ryzen 5600X. Not top level now, but currently probably one of the best bang for the buck budget CPUs you can get your hands on right now. I'm going with some Vulcan Z DDR4, which is CL16. I think it's 3200. Yep. I'm also, because it's the Vetroo case, I'm going to go with the Vetroo V5 cooler, which I've done a video on as well. So there we go. I'm going to be putting in an MSI Radeon RX 6600 GPU. Again, not top of the range, but for 1080 gaming, it's absolutely superb and really good value. You can pick them up for about $220 right now. I'm putting in a NVMe drive for the boot drive, which is 512 gigabytes. And then I'm also putting in a 1 terabyte SSD for all your games, applications, and all that kind of stuff. All right, so let's get all this put together. So I've finished the build, and a couple of things of note before I get to any conclusions. One, the fan control that's included, there's no way of getting that to connect for the actual fans to the motherboard so it can control the speed, etc. They'll just go at the one speed, which isn't great, but it is what it is. However, there is a sync for the RGB, so you can control the actual lighting on the fans, you just can't actually control the temperatures, which is a bit of a shame. One big note, as you can see, one of the fans that was originally down here has moved up here. The reason being is it actually conflicts with the USB 3 connector on the motherboard, so there wasn't enough room for both, so I had to move one. That's one of those two fans up here. They don't include any standard fan screws in the bag of goodies that you get with the case. So you don't, luckily I had extra fan screws. So just as a note, if you're going to move the fan up, you may need to find extra screws from other fans. that's not ideal, but it is what it is. Apart from that, on the back, the concerns I had with these plastic routers for cables were pretty true, because the 24 pin doesn't even fit inside it. Neither do the VGA cables, so it's only really useful for fan cables, etc, etc. The Vetroo cooler I was able to attach to the controller, but I had to use the splitter that comes with it to make sure I had enough room on that side, because I didn't want to route the cable over here, so I've got all three on this side. Otherwise, yeah, everything was, the power supply fitted okay. The two holes underneath were good for routing the cables through from the motherboard. I was able to tie the cables around here where the holes, so you can't see them once the back panel's back on. The only worry I've got now is this 24 pin cable sticks far out, so when I'm putting the back panel on, because there's nowhere around here to tie it, so I'm going to have to push this down and some of the other cables down to get the back panel on. But that's not unusual with builds like this. So yeah, I'll now picked on those features. I'll now go through my final thoughts and conclusion. So what are my thoughts and conclusions on this case? I think for the price, it's not a bad case. It's not going to set the world on fire. It competes with the with a fractal pop, etc, etc, and I think it's going to lose out to those kind of cases. It's not got any real good features that make it stick out. It's got a mesh front, which is great, but so have all the other cases now. Is it a waste of money? No, by no means is it a waste of money. Is it difficult to build in? Not really. It could have made life easier. The tie points weren't necessarily in great positions. Those cable channels that I mentioned at the end of the build aren't great. So there are definitely features that could be improved on to make the overall build an easier process in the case. However, if you like the looks of it, you want to get the Vetroo case to go with the, say, the Vetroo cooler, I can't say don't buy it, because it's not a big thumbs down from me. It's just a shame because it's not a big thumbs up. Alright, I hope you found that information useful. If you did, please toss a like on the video. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you'll be notified of future content. I'm going to be doing some, adding some more CPU coolers to the Cooler League over the next few months. I've also got the last installment of my water cool vlog, which you can see it's up and running and it's over there, but I'm going to go through the running of the channels, etc, etc. So don't forget to see that content, and as always, take care.